Hey, I'm Nico from Licks of the Beast. This year marks the 35th anniversary of the original release of Iron Maiden's 7th studio album, The Incredible Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. In this video, we're going to take a celebratory look back at this masterpiece, song by song. With Somewhere in Time, Iron Maiden had recorded 6 studio albums, and with each one, the band's sound was in constant evolution. By that 6th album, they developed a very advanced and polished version of the unique brand of heavy metal they'd started with their prototypical first album, released only a mere 6 years earlier. The rhythm section was tight to the point where even the drum and bass fills were well coordinated. Dave and Adrian were quickly establishing themselves as one of the great guitar duos in rock, each with his own uniquely identifiable style. Bruce was maturing as a singer with a fuller tone and more expressive delivery, and the introduction of guitar synths gave the band a more polished and more identifiable sound. The ideas were getting bigger, and the creativity was flourishing. Seventh Son of a Seventh Son is a natural evolution of the sound Iron Maiden had achieved on the previous album. The guitar tone was darker, less chorus heavy, and a little more raw. And where the previous album featured the use of guitar synths, actual keyboard synthesizers were used on this record. But to me, the biggest difference was that the songwriting was much tighter and more cohesive. Whereas Somewhere in Time was much more experimental in terms of the song's structures and arrangements, the tracks on Seventh Son of a Seventh Son are a little more straightforward and more streamlined. Even though my personal favorite Iron Maiden album is actually Somewhere in Time, objectively speaking, I think Seventh Son is a step above with songs that hit the mark a little better. Bruce Dickinson also returned in a big way as a songwriter after not having any credits at all on the previous album. And it's likely that his input was the secret ingredient that elevated this album to heavy metal greatness. As I understand it, the idea of making this a concept album came about when Steve Harris and Bruce Dickinson were discussing ideas for the songs The Clairvoyant and the title track and how they fit together. It started to turn into something they thought would make for a good theme worth exploring, so they steered the writing in that direction for the entire album. Now, as far as concept albums go, this one is fairly loose with a story that isn't particularly well defined, and the same goes for its characters. It's not in the same vein as Queensryche's Operation Mindcrime or Wasp's The Crimson Idol. Nevertheless, it does come across as a classic story of good versus evil, based on the hero's journey archetype, so it's pretty easy to fill in the missing details using your own imagination. Of course, the musicianship on this record is top-notch, the performances are passionate, the songwriting is exceptional, and they paid attention to all the little details like the amazing artwork and the cool stage setup for the supporting tour. All of these things combined to make Seventh Son of a Seventh Son one of the greatest heavy metal albums of all time. Now, let's look at the 8 songs that make up this metal masterpiece. The album is bookended by a prologue/epilogue composed of just an acoustic guitar playing open chords and a very evocative vocal by Bruce.
7 deadly sins, 7 ways to win, 7 holy paths to hell, and your trip begins. 7 downward slopes, 7 bloodied hopes, 7 are your burning fires, 7 your desires.
The same lyrics are used for both the intro and outro, except the inclusion of the line "and your trip begins" during the intro. Also, the last word of the section rises in tone during the intro and descends in the outro. I've always found that to be such a great touch from a storytelling point of view. Once the song's real intro begins, the volume swell picks up from the last note of the vocals and builds anticipation as the really catchy synth figure comes in. This is basically just an E7 sus4 arpeggio. The accented chords and staccato single notes played by the guitars and bass frame the keyboard riff and help make it sound absolutely huge. It also builds anticipation like a great opening track should, and this could be felt especially strongly during the band's live performances of the song. This riff will come back at the end of the song for a grand finale type of ending with the guitars, drums, and bass playing a progressively faster rhythm. The interplay between Dave and Adrian during the song is so perfect, and I just want to look at the verse rhythm as an example. So Dave is just playing these chords, E5, C over E, D5, and E5 again. Adrian plays the same chords, but with a busier strummed pattern to give a sense of forward momentum. The parts are panned hard left and right respectively, and that creates this really big sound without feeling cluttered. The album's second song is one of the band's most interesting compositions up to this point in their career. The structure, the vocal melodies, rhythms, pacing, build-up, and the instrumental section with two brilliant solos, a gorgeous guitar harmony, and a powerful blood-curdling scream by Bruce makes this song a big favorite amongst fans who often lament its undervalued status. This track is a masterclass in songwriting with storytelling in mind. The way they set the mood and how the intensity builds gradually along with the lyrics is phenomenal, and it's really worth an in-depth analysis. I did a full breakdown of this song last year, and I'll add a link to that video both in the description section and in the end screen at the end of this video. For this video, however, I want to just break down the beautiful harmony that Dave and Adrian play before the bridge and after their guitar solos, because it's such a huge moment in the song. Dave's part is played in the 7th position like this, which is pretty standard issue for an Iron Maiden guitar melody in the key of E minor, like Phantom of the Opera or The Trooper. Adrian's part is not played a third higher as in Phantom of the Opera, but a 6th lower like he does in The Trooper. And like The Trooper, his melody varies just slightly from Dave's, so it goes like this. With Steve and Nichols driving rhythm underneath, this part sounds so powerful and so majestic. Can I Play With Madness was the album's first single. The main parts of the song were written by Adrian Smith and Bruce Dickinson, and Steve Harris came up with the middle section. And it's one of the band's more accessible and radio-friendly songs. The track is bookended by the a cappella vocal line sung by Bruce and harmonized by Adrian. And it's a little reminiscent of Carry On Wayward Son by Kansas. By this point in their career, Harris and company knew what made a great single and what its purpose was. So this song is a finely crafted piece of music designed to give fans a teaser of the sound of the new album and simultaneously gather a wider and more mainstream interest to broaden their audience and introduce more people to Iron Maiden. The song is in the key of D Mixolydian, which isn't exactly typical for a heavy metal song. And the main guitar riff features the chords D, C add 9, G over B, and G, played over a 16th note open D pedal for a driving, upbeat feel.
Can I play with
What really makes this song is the contrast between the verse and the chorus. The verse vocal melody is almost spoken, delivered with swagger and attitude. And the chorus features a change to the almost relative key of B minor and a sharp change in feel with a much more melodic vocal that has a call and response line. The reason I say B minor is almost the relative key is because D Mixolydian is very similar to D major except for the minor seventh. So the actual key is really G major, not D major, although it kind of feels like D major since that is the home chord. The Evil That Men Do was the album's second single and the only other song written by Smith, Dickinson, and Harris together. The intro is a very catchy melodic theme played by Adrian Smith and doubled an octave higher to make it sound larger and fuller. This melodic theme will be used as the basis for the pre-chorus riff, with Dave Murray harmonizing some of the notes to give it a richer texture. The chorus is also loosely based on this melody but uses a B-flat dyad instead of the B natural to add an element of tension. Now this is the kind of thing that makes the difference between a good song and a great one. Every part of the song until this point uses the B natural from the E minor scale. This note is featured prominently in the intro, the verse melody, and in the pre-chorus. So it would only feel natural to hit a B as the accented note of the chorus. Right? But that's where you can see the brilliance in the songwriting. A B natural here would feel so obvious that it wouldn't have any kind of tension, which would make it far less impactful than that bluesy B flat. The title track of this masterpiece album is an exceptional piece of musical storytelling. The first half of the song doesn't feature any parts that are difficult to play or any particularly intricate musical passages, but the deliberate pace can be quite challenging to maintain, so it's trickier than it sounds. The real standout in this first half of the song is Nicko McBrain, with his exceptionally creative and intricate drum parts. In each section, Nicko plays anything but an obvious beat. Listen to the way he throws in tom and floor tom hits in between the beats, and the way he plays with his hi-hats all throughout. The originality of his fills, especially in the transitions from one part to another, are nothing short of spectacular. Then we have to talk about the brilliance of the melodies and the arrangement. For example, the vocal melody in the verses is one of the most simple things a vocalist could sing, and yet the way it's delivered makes it sound like something far more complex. This is a call and response type of line where the call goes up the E minor scale, 1, 2, and 3, and the response goes down starting from 4, then 3, 2, and 1. This is as simple as it gets. However, the verse's structure and the rhythm of the melody, with Bruce's singing some of the notes slightly late as opposed to right on the beats, makes it feel both intense and hypnotic. The last 3 minutes of this song are among the band's career highlights. Dave and Adrian each take 2 wonderful solos back to back, each one separated by a different short musical interlude. Adrian gets particularly creative with some outside-the-box licks that combine notes from the minor hexatonic and blues scales, as well as some really cool chromaticism to keep the listener's ears interested. Like the really cool opening lick. Or this lick right here. Or the last lick. After the solos, there are 3 back-to-back guitar harmonies, plus a 4th one that serves as a grand finale. The first one of these is actually a 3-part harmony, and the others are 2-part harmonies that are embellished with the use of synth pads, giving it an otherworldly, dreamy vibe. One is actually not even a harmony, it's a melody line played by Adrian while Dave plays chords behind it. This song is the only one on the album written by Dave Murray along with Steve Harris, and it's a very interesting piece that features some truly brilliant composing and arranging. Now, at this point in the story, the protagonist is trying to warn the villagers about an impending disaster that he, as the 7th son of a 7th son, can foresee. And unfortunately, his warnings fall on deaf ears. What this song does brilliantly is it captures the mood and state of mind of this character, frantically trying to get everyone to listen to him, knowing the disastrous consequences that await the entire village if his warnings are not heeded. The way they convey this mood in the music is through the use of constant changes. The song begins in the key of A minor with a slow, lulling intro with soft guitar melodies enveloped by synth pads. Then, they immediately shift to the key of D minor with a fanfare type of guitar riff. Halfway through the verse, they change to the key of E minor, and for the pre-chorus, the key is still E minor, but the tonal center shifts to A, and then, for the chorus, there's an abrupt change to the key of E flat minor. And there are still more key changes and feel changes to come after that, which we'll cover in a future video, but basically, for a relatively short song, there's a whole lot going on. The song ends with a beautiful, almost Baroque classical guitar arrangement that fades in from the fade out and ends on its own fade out shortly after, leaving the listener wanting more of the exquisitely beautiful melody. The album's third single is packed with key modulations and field changes in its 4 minutes and 24 seconds. The song starts in the key of D major with a riff based on the D major triad and a melody on top of it in D Ionian that is played in a lower octave the first time around and then in the higher octave the second time as the pace picks up. For the verse, they switch to the key of D minor, and the feel changes from loose and open to tight and closed, thus making the mood suddenly much more somber. The solo features a huge mood swing with a change to the same happy rhythm as the intro, only in the even brighter key of E major. Dave Murray plays a brilliant guitar solo in this song that, unlike his more typical solos, sounds very much worked out and structured. He builds his phrases from both the E Ionian and C sharp Aeolian modes throughout, except in the end where he plays a descending phrase using the E pentatonic minor scale, in a rather unusual pattern of 2 quarter note triplets per bar. Most people wouldn't think of playing a minor pentatonic lick over a rhythm that is very clearly in E major, but Dave did it, and it is one of the most recognizable and memorable licks of the entire album. The album closes with a much shorter song than their customary epics, but a very strong track nevertheless. Unlike the slow building intros of Hallowed Be Thy Name, To Tame a Land, and Alexander the Great, here they launch right into the song with the main riff harmonized in thirds. As is often the case with their harmonized riffs, Dave and Adrian each play a slightly different version of the melody in order to make it sound broader and more interesting. Adrian's part goes like this. And Dave's part sounds like this. For the verses, they do something a little bit different, where Dave just plays a C, D, and E power chord progression with a gallop rhythm, And Adrian plays clean whole note chords using some suspended and seventh voicings to give the section a little more depth and ambiance. For the chorus, they change key from E minor to D minor and make really nice use of sus2 chords to maintain that dreamy vibe of the album. Halfway through the chorus, they change key again, this time to F minor for the second half. For Adrian Smith's solo, there is yet another key change to F sharp minor, and then they seamlessly modulate back down to the key of E minor, with both guitars holding the E power chord in a tight gallop, while Steve Harris plays a little bass solo with some highly impressive tight and fast fingerpicking. Now my fingerpicking technique isn't quite there yet, so I'm going to play this part with a pick. The song ends with another solo over the same rhythm figure as the first solo in F sharp minor, this time played by Dave Murray, with some really wild and aggressive legato playing and some mean sounding pick slides added for good measure. It's a true grand finale with two fermatas, one on the F sharp chord and another one on the E chord, changing key one last time back to the original key of E minor to bring the album full circle to the 7 Deadly Sins outro.
7 deadly sins, 7 ways to win, 7 holy paths to hell. 7 downward slopes, 7 bloodied hopes, 7 are your burning fires, 7 your desires.
Only the Good Die Young was actually featured on an episode of the TV show Miami Vice. For those of you who don't know, Miami Vice was a great crime drama series that ran from 1985 to 1989. In that episode, Don Johnson's character, Detective Crockett, is on a boat with this teenager who's listening to Only the Good Die Young on his cassette player. So Crockett comes over, turns it off, and replaces the tape with something by Eric Clapton, saying something like, "Yeah, he's been around for over 20 years. Let's see if your boys are going to be around that long." Well, here we are 35 years later, and Iron Maiden are probably bigger than ever. So, shut the f*** up, Crockett. I've been waiting 35 years to say that. Seventh Son of a Seventh Son is still considered by many to be a benchmark album. Not just for Iron Maiden, but for heavy metal bands in general. And I find it difficult to disagree with that because it truly is a brilliant album. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'd love for everyone to share their thoughts on the record. When did you first hear it, and what was your initial reaction? And what do you think about it 35 years later? As always, I want to thank you all so much for watching, and do stay tuned for more licks of the beast.